Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and yes, you read the title of this review, and I'm definitely looking forward to this one, and as I teased in the last review, yes, I'm reviewing, I think, if not, one of the top best Disney documentaries of all time. That's right, I'm reviewing Waking Sleeping Beauty. Yes, Waking Sleeping Beauty. This is the story, the documentary, all about these young, naive, Disney, ambitious animators through the 10 years, starting in 1984, when they were about to release what would come out the next year in 1985, which being one of Disney's most disastrous animated films, The Black Cauldron, to 1994, when they were about to release a true Disney animation gem, which of course being The Lion King. This is their story, how they went from, just not looking too good, making animation content, to making fantastic animation content. Just amazing and just memorable animated features that we all know and love. Yes, so, okay, the story. Through extensive use of archival clips, documentarian Don Hahn explores how Walt Disney Animation Studios broke out of their mid-1980s box office slump, which, of course, as I said, being The Black Cauldron. The film focuses on the group of young, ambitious animators and filmmakers, such as Tim Burton and Toy Story director John Lasseter, who struggled against outside competition and old guard studio executives within the company to reclaim Disney's legacy as a producer of world-class animated entertainment. So yeah, so Don Hahn, who is the narrator of this documentary, guides us through the history and what was going on through the 10 years at the Disney Animation Studios to when Walt Disney, who was the toast of Hollywood, and as Don Hahn's saying, he turned away from animation at one point in the 1950s, and he focused a lot more on live-action material and TV material, and of course, with Disneyland. But, when Walt Disney passed away, and after he personally was involved with The Jungle Book, the company and Walt's 9 Old Men, they continued making hand-drawn animated films for all ages. But by the late 1970s and early 1980s, things started to change for the company. Because, for example, Walt's 9 Old Men, all of these, legendary people that started all this in the first place, alongside with their boss, Walt Disney, they were retiring and moving on, and new, young, fresh animators were stepping in. And not to mention, also, the 9 Old Men, and along with the new incoming animators, they were working on The Fox and the Hound. Not to mention, at one point, of course, he wouldn't be left out. Don Hahn, he mentions Don Bluth because, as we all should know, Don Bluth, he, of course, was involved with the Disney company, starting off working on Sleeping Beauty and doing the Small One short, Robin Hood. But by the early 1980s, Don Bluth, and along with 11 animators that were working with him on a cat short film, if you remember that. I forget the name of the title. They started to realize that some of the magic that Disney was making at the time was gone. They lost their touch. They weren't really making successful animated films like during the days when Walt was around. And that is kind of true. I mean, some of the Disney animated films that came out in the 1970s, they weren't big successful films like Snow White, Cinderella, or Pinocchio. And Don, on his birthday, along with the 11 animators, they all quit their jobs and they went on to make their own pieces of animation, as we all know. And of course, that did hurt Disney, and especially Ron Miller. Yeah, I almost forgot his last name. Walt's son-in-law. Yeah, because, of course, as we all know, Ron Miller, he was running Disney at that time. And, yeah, of course, more new animators came in to finish up on The Fox and the Hound. And that's when, in the late 1970s and in the early 1980s, new faces stepped in, taking charge of the company, which being Michael Eisner, Frank Wells, and Jeffrey Katzenberg. And when it came up to The Black Cauldron, because, yeah, with The Black Cauldron turning out to be a disaster and Katzenberg, you know, just horrified of the results at first, and just, you know, editing The Black Cauldron, and, you know, when The Black Cauldron came out, because, yeah, it turned out to be a disaster, and as Don says in the documentary, it lost to the Care Bears film. Now, that's an important fun fact right there. A Disney film lost to the Care Bears film. That's really depressing for Disney. But of course, it seemed like after The Black Cauldron, things started to shapen up for the company at first. Like, they weren't there yet, but, you know, they at one point moved to another studio in Burbank, and it was not that good. I mean, they were just where they were at, because, like, there were barbed wires, and they were right next to a bowling alley. Jeez, like, you know, it's kind of sad that they were just moved out from the main animation studio that started it all, since Snow White. Like, ugh. But of course, when it came up to, like, say, Peter Schneider stepping in and, like, shaping things up and so on, and some of the animators describing Peter Schneider, you know, like, what he was like, and, like, he can, like, I don't know, bend himself like a pretzel, or, I don't know, like, you know, that's what they say. So yeah. After, like, later on in the 1980s, when films like, say, The Great Mouse Detective and Oliver and Company came out, well, they were turning out to be pretty good, but especially when Roger Rabbit happened and The Little Mermaid, that's when, yeah, definitely Disney was getting up back on their feet, and especially, not to mention, Touchstone Pictures was happening, and, yeah, and also, you know, the Disney Renaissance. The Disney Renaissance began with The Little Mermaid. And, you know, when, like, say, they started using computers to do some of the animation work, and with the help of Pixar, and even at one point, when The Rescuers Down Under happened, at one point, Katzenberg pulled the plug off of the marketing, the advertisement. And, you know, Katzenberg was, you know, was like, we're going to start over the next day. And thus they did, and right after the Rescuers Down Under, well, we all know what would come next. Beauty and the Beast. Well, not to mention, with The Little Mermaid, I almost forgot to mention, because, you know, enter Howard Ashman and Alan Menken. They were brought on board to do the score and music for The Little Mermaid. And, of course, they were brought on board once again for Beauty and the Beast. And up at that point, well, Howard Ashman, he was suffering with AIDS. And, you know, unfortunately, with his passing, you know, months before Beauty and the Beast came out, and, you know, the people at Disney visiting Howard one last time at the hospital, and as Don Hahn said, you know, Howard's mother pulled the sheets, you know, and, like, revealing the Beauty and the Beast sweatshirt that Howard was wearing, and they were telling Howard how much of a great success Beauty and the Beast was turning out, and, you know, and as Don said, who would have thought that this would be a success, you know, and Howard, who was slowly dying, and, you know, he barely had a whisper of a voice, you know, he whispered, "I would." Yeah, he would have known that Beauty and the Beast would be a success. And thus, it was. It was definitely a masterpiece when it came out. And not to mention that, you know, things were really looking good for the company. They won a Golden Globe, and they were nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. And even though they didn't win, that was still something. And afterwards, the rest of the Disney films that they were working on in the 90s, Aladdin, The Lion King, Pocahontas, and not to mention, more animation content was coming out. The Nightmare Before Christmas. Disney teamed up with Pixar to make a buddy picture, as we all know, Toy Story. And there was also a Beauty and the Beast Broadway show happening. So much was happening at that time. Like, things were really starting to look good for the Disney company. And, you know, also another sad passing in the 90s and in 1994 and before The Lion King came out, Frank Wells, who sadly died in a helicopter accident. And not to mention, well, Katzenberg, he was really getting out of hand. And, you know, he unfortunately didn't get a job position at Disney that he wanted. And as Michael Eisner was saying, like, he wasn't being patient. And if he had been patient and just cooperated and not have pushed the Disney animators, and you know what, basically, Katzenberg, he was just, like basically putting his face all over The Lion King, like, to describe it, you know, hey guys, come see what me and my crew are working on. Yeah, I'm responsible for The Lion King. That kind of stuff. And gosh, like, that was too much. Like, Katzenberg was jumping the shark. You know what I mean? And, you know, Katzenberg at that point, because Eisner didn't give him the job that he wanted, Katzenberg really felt that he had no future at the studio. And after The Lion King's premiere, he resigned from Disney. And as we all know, what would come next for Katzenberg? He would team up with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen to create DreamWorks, and thus Katzenberg being in charge of the animation. And as we all know, DreamWorks' first ever animated feature being Ants. So yeah, that caused a stir with Pixar, as we all know. So yeah, and definitely at that point, like, with The Lion King, that was definitely, you know, the last, like, true Disney gem that the animators, who started from 1984 to 1994, just making a great animated film, you know, and what would come next, like, you know, for the rest of the Disney Renaissance, not disastrous, but they were good films, you know, like, not great successes, you know, starting with Pocahontas. So, yeah. But hey, what would come next in the later years was thanks to Disney. You know, a lot of other great animated films, rather they be in 2D or CG, you know, from other great animation studios, I'm telling you, just, Waking Sleeping Beauty, I think, without a doubt, just a great Disney documentary. Like, so much to it. The history, the emotions to it, what the people at Disney was going through at times, trying their very best to make great animated films. It's just amazing. It really is. And definitely, I am giving this a 10 out of 10. This is such a good documentary, and, you know, I do recommend it if any of you, you know, haven't seen this. And if any of you have seen this, let me know what you think of this documentary, and let me know what you thought of my review. Leave comments, and give this review a like as always. So, with that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Waking Sleeping Beauty. And also, I just want to mention this, may those who had been part of the Disney family rest in peace. Howard Ashman, Frank Wells, Joe Ranft, and Roy E. Disney. And yeah, because Waking Sleeping Beauty, dedicating all of them. So yeah, again, Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video / review. And stay tuned, because the next review, well, I guess technically it is a follow-up to Braveheart, because, well, this movie is all about the Bruce. You probably know what I'm talking about, so stay tuned for that. Take care, and peace out.